Rob, did you get
What's that?
my email about the origins of hull number one, pilot hull number one?
I didn't.
You didn't? Oh dear. Well, let me see
I
if
mean, I could have, and I could have not. I lost it in spam, but I did not see it.
I sent you a whole picture and some history of pilot hull number one, which I sailed on. Was
Sailed out in
young.
the lakes, yeah.
Yeah.
What was her name?
I can't remember the name. It belonged to Susan Fisher.
Huntress was her name.
No, that was a B-40, John.
No, that's
This
the
was a
number one
Fisher
pilot.
pilot. This
Oh,
was a
wasn't that
Fisher
wasn't
pilot.
Huntress a wooden one?
Number one is owned by Kevin Harris, the surveyor from down around Portland. And her name is now Huntress, and I'm under the impression that was her original name. She was built in 56.
Yeah,
We got the pilot book right
Huntress.
here.
Yeah, there was a real early Huntress. Yep. I'll be damned.
I think it's amazing that hull one of both series was named Huntress.
Different owners too, huh?
No, her original name was Sequence, actually.
Oh, okay.
And then Damn Yankee. So that was probably the boat you sailed on, Bob, was Bob Beebe. That was probably
No, but what I was talking about is actual Sparkman and Stevens wood built by Fisher Brothers.
oh,
And I sent some stuff to Barry. I looked it up and took some pictures, and so I'll see if I can find that email.
The original ones were 33 feet, weren't they?
All right, well, maybe let's use that as a segue. So we gotta, because I want to record this for all the people that are in prison and can't get to a computer tonight, or because you know what a renegade group of people we are in the boat business, or otherwise disposed. So what I want to do is sort of set the framework of tonight. Then the key people tonight are going to be John Correa, who's here representing the Pilot 35 Owners Association, Dad, because you've been around the longest.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And then Uncle Hank, you're the backup plan if he forgets something.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we got to play in D or E.
I'll run the
That's
computer
strong.
and try to stay out of the way. So I'm Barry Hinckley. That's Hank Hinckley down there. Bob Hinckley here to my left. And that's the only thing about our family is to the left is that he happens to be sitting to my left.
Right.
Thank God. And then there's John Correa up in People's Republic of Maine, who runs the Pilot 35 Association. So what I'd like to do tonight is, Dad, if you could give us like your best recollection of the history of the Pilot, how it kind of came about, how it grew out of the wooden ones into the glass ones. And also those Chilean boats, the ones you built for the Chilean Navy.
Oh, God, yes.
Just talk about what you remember about, because we're going back here at this point in time to the early 50s, right? And Spartan and Stevens, and so if you could just kick it off with what you remember, and then we'll move to John, if you've got anything you want to backfill, because I know you're probably
Closer to it than I am.
Well, you're the most recent student, and then Uncle Hank, it'd be great to hear some stories from you about, because you were, in your teens when this boat came of age. So keep the stories family oriented. This is a family show.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. All right.
Those first boats, I think, were
Hank, raise your hand.
33 feet, right, Rob?
Where's Hank?
Pardon me?
Right here.
Hank,
Bottom.
Oh,
raise
Hank.
your hand. Okay.
The first ones are 33 feet wood, right?
That's
And
correct.
then they built seven. We built. Did we build? There was 7 wooden ones built.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then did we
There
build
were-
the wooden ones? I can't remember.
There were about 12. Were they not built by the Chilean Navy under license?
Oh, yeah,
Something like
12.
that.
That's correct. Yeah, 6 for the San Diego Yacht Club, whatever it is, and 6 for the Navy. They sent over an engineer and a laborer, and we taught him how to laminate, and we built them a set of molds sold through Sparkman Stevens. They engineered the whole thing and boxed them up and shipped them to Chile. And then they actually built them down there. They're pretty rough, but about 20 years later, they started showing up on the West Coast, you know, Pilot 35 for sale at a very low price, but of course they were low quality to relative to the ones we built, but yeah. So the original 7 wooden ones, I've forgotten the owner of one of those, did very well racing it for years. And how many would we build?
125, I think,
125.
glass ones. Is that right, John?
I've got the Pilot book here, and that's what I'm going, that's the
I
book.
think it's
that Don
125,
Danilek-
but
Roughly, yeah.
Don
Yeah.
Danilek built, and he's got 125 exactly,
Yeah.
including 7
Ooh,
wooden.
winning.
Yeah, we built one for myself in '65, had it for 10 years. You guys grew up on it, kinda.
Yeah.
And I raced it in the Monhegan race a number of times. Good sailing boat, say the least. That boat originally was designed by Augie Nielsen, who was working for Sparkman Stevens. And he was a hell of a he had a good eye and great detail guy. His plans were immaculate. And yeah, I forgot we had a wooden one for a mold and took a mold off it and maybe stretched it a little bit. And it was 35. I remember we did an ad one time, Pilot 35, 9 inches, 9 inches more, 9 inches less.
Yeah,
So a little over 35 feet, almost 36 feet. Anyway, at one time, I remember we were pushing out 1 a week. We really cranked them out. The trouble with that, we ended up refinishing them afterwards under warranty, and it was more expensive, but it was a challenge and kind of fun.
But I got a question for Bob there. You
Yeah.
said you're pushing them out at 1 a week, but what was the total amount of man hours involved?
Oh, I don't remember that, what the man hours were, but we had a production line going. Were you there, John, then? John, Correa, were you there?
No.
No, you were over at Bass Submarine.
Yeah, I came to Bass Harbor in the early 1980s.
Okay, yeah.
but-
The reason I asked about the man hours, you mentioned last week that a B-40 was about 8,000 man hours. I was just curious if it was significantly less on a Pilot.
Oh, yeah, they were less, but.
The 8,000
simple
hours
boat,
on
they
the
never
40
been
was
on
just
board
a
and
peak.
smaller rig, etc. But it was a nice boat to build, and they were pretty much all the same, with exception of the few yawls.
So why did you stop building them?
Pardon me?
Why did you stop building them?
Couldn't make money on them anymore.
Well, it kind of ran out, and we shifted over to S&S and did that Hinckley 38, which was only moderately successful. The Pilot was a very successful boat. We probably should have kept building it, but one of the problems that back then, or that number of boats, the molds get really tired, and you got to retool. And if you retool, you got to plan to build another 25 or so boats to break even. So we said, let's do it.
Bob,
What's the process of
when-
retooling?
Pardon me?
What's the process of retooling? What do you have to do there?
Well, you have to build a new hull mold, a new deck mold. The deck molds are more complicated than the hull molds. Hank, you can tell them about it. You build a lot of molds.
Yep, I'm afraid I
They're
have.
expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a slow, you have to get a plug. In other words, a boat, and you want to resurface that. So it's as perfect as you can make it. And the boat, it's ideally upside down. You don't have to do it, but the hull goes upside down. That's kind of what we did in the 41, as I recall it, Bob. Took a wooden boat, flipped it upside down, and took a mold on it.
Right, yeah.
But at any rate, so you'd had to ideally talk somebody out of their boat or build a cold molded boat, something like that to do it. And, so you're talking, even back then, you were probably talking between what, $60,000 and $100,000, $120,000 to build a new deck and hull mold. Then you've got the seats
Yep.
and the hatch tanks and the rudder and yada, yada. It doesn't take long to build up a lot. So as Bob says, how are you gonna amortize that? The other thing I think, Bob, it seems to me, I remember discussions between you and Dad about the cost of the boats, because the details that were like in the 40s and the 41s start creeping their way. People want them in the smaller boats. And as that gets in there, those smaller boats start getting more and more expensive. They're actually harder to build head in a Pilot than it is, say, in a 40 or a 50 footer. It's harder to work in there. So those hours start creeping up. It's like what happened to the 40. You mentioned 8,000. At one point, it peaked out at 8,000, but the basic Bermuda 40 in 19, what it would have been, 77, 78, was about 4,800 hours plus extras. But when we had the material and the answers and the molds and everything were working well, we were able to keep it down. I think when you started building the Pilots, they were just under 3,000 hours for the basic boat. I've seen the
Hank?
numbers, but I couldn't swear to that. And they crawled right up to be almost the same as the B-40.
Hank,
Wow.
when was what was the last year you built a Pilot, do you think?
So I know 75.
75.
And I remember asking Dad, because I love the Pilot 35. I've thought it was one of the most beautiful boats other than the Hinckley 41. I like the, I mean, sorry, Mickey and all the B40 people on there. I do like, I like a good transom. And I think,
I'm with you, Barry.
A much better looking transom. But I remember asking you, Dad, why would we stop building them? And you said you couldn't make money on them. And that's why we kept crawling up to larger boats, because you could mark a larger boat up more, because there was, you know, a little more margin. I hadn't heard the tooling thing, but that makes complete sense. Because then if you have to re-amortize, you know, a whole new mold set across boats, you got to sell 25 more till you get back. Because these boats were only selling for 125, 150,000 at the time, but that was a lot of money for a 35-foot boat.
Yeah, I was also varied a little bit.
Did you say Augie
If we
Nielsen
decide to outsource
designed the first
tanks
pilot?
or pulpits, things like that, that came in as material, not labor. So there was a little bit of squishiness there. In the hours.
I want to ask another question about mold.
Designed
Yeah, and if
the
you guys also, so there's so many people on the call, if you guys want to ask questions, just raise your hand so we can go one at a time. Be
Oh.
great.
Don't want to interrupt.
Sorry, go ahead. So go ahead with your question.
Yeah,
Did you say Augie Nielsen designed the first pilot?
Augie Nielsen, yeah. But he was working for Sparkman Stevens, for Olin Stevens.
I have a funny story about that. I asked Olin Stevens in a big meeting one time. I said, Mr. Stevens, is it true that Augie Nielsen designed the Pilot? He said, no, John, Sparkman and Stevens designed the Pilot. But one time I asked him a little later in a more private setting, I said, so what did Olin Stevens have to do with the Pilot? And he said, what did Augie Nielsen have to do with the Pilot? And he said, well, he was an older designer than I was and more experienced, and he was a much better designer than I was. And I just gave him the parameters of how long it should be and waterline length, and he did all the drawings of it. But I thought that was pretty remarkable to hear Olin Stevens saying he was a better designer than I was.
Yeah, he was damn good.
I laugh at that.
Well, on that segue, John, if you could give us kind of your overview as one of the leaders of the Pilot 35 Association, and then sort of give us the timeline and what you guys are focused on and the history of the boat, from, because I know you guys are on this thing every day, and then we can backfill with questions from Dad and from for Dad and Uncle Hank.
I was just looking back through my files. I have the original price of my boat, Acapella. She was built in 71, and I think it was under $50,000 in 71. And later on, when I bought her for about $80,000. And then later on, she was worth about $120,000. And now I think it's worth about $70,000. So it just goes to show you how things change. But I love the boats. I agree with you, Barry. I think it's the best looking Hinckley boat that I know of, except for the 41, because I'm in love with
When the Hinckley
41.
Company came out with that day sailor, you know, that,
Yeah, it's beautiful
and,
too.
you know, it would have been a lot better just to take the Pilot 35 and make it a day sailor. Right?
Agree.
Would have been a hell of a lot cheaper, and I think it would have sold a hell of a lot better.
Well, the
It's a
problem
great
with the
day sailor.
Pilot is it's, you know, it's a full keel boat and attached rudder, and people have decided there are other ways to make a boat go faster, and people want a faster boat that's a little more fun to steer. That's why I like the 41 competition, is really one of my favorites. So
Well,
totally.
that spade rudder was definitely a big improvement. Not as friendly on the lobster traps, but
Yeah, no, we never hung up on
you weren't forced to go overboard and unhang them.
them.
I was.
I don't remember that.
You were in the cockpit and I was overboard, 50-degree water. We got hung up on a couple. Yeah.
A long time ago.
Yeah. But anyway, so Dad, can you talk a little bit about the wooden pilots and then the transition from the wooden pilots? Do you remember much about them? Frank and I, did you guys make many of those?
I don't think we built the 7 wooden ones, did we? I'm pretty sure we didn't, did we? We
Oh, you
didn't.
did.
We built 7
Yeah.
wooden ones?
Yeah.
Oh, good man.
And as I say, unfortunately, Kevin Harris couldn't make the meeting tonight because he knows a lot about the wooden ones particularly, but his
Do you know how
books
many of those are left, John?
excuse me?
Do you know how
I
many of
don't
those
know.
are
I
left?
don't, no idea. I know that there's at least one other out of the original 7, but I don't remember what it is or where it is.
And do you track any of the Chilean boats? Have any of those worked their way into the ecosystem?
I
Up here
haven't, I knew about them, but I don't know anything other than they were built, basically.
I think I ran into one in Florida here a few years back, but very different. As Bob says, it was not the same boat.
Yeah, I've seen them before. They're pretty rough, I mean, they look like what you'd expect for a Navy training vessel. Just very Spartan, you know, early fiberglass, just, you know, rugged but ugly for a pilot.
Right.
You know, no real refinement at all. A little more of a Clorox bottle. All right. And so let's we've got a couple questions here in the chat, so I'm going to go to that. Ryan and Jill would like to know the history of the Custom as well. We have one in North Carolina, the Custom Pilot and its origin. John, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I've got to look in the pilot book. Is where I'm headed.
If Ann, if you want to give us an update on your boat, Ann Slater in the audience, if you want to give us a little info on your boat you have out in Washington State, that'd be interesting. She might be muted.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, what do you got?
It's a 1968 and we bought it in 2016. We bought it from a fellow who sailed up to Alaska a couple times. And he bought it from somebody that that had it for years and years and sailed extensively in the Northwest. And before that, they think it was brought around through the Panama Canal. And I can't remember the other names of it, but right now it's called Outlier.
So when you say custom, like, so a lot of the boats were, you know, custom, but they were all because you could order it within parameters and they're semi-custom, right? But they were still in a series. You talk
No,
about
this
No,
has
different
a
technology.
raised doghouse.
Yeah.
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 wow,
And
I've never seen-
and rumor
The
has
galley
it that
down the starboard side and you know, it's more living room.
never seen one of those.
Yeah.
How many?
5 were
Probably
built.
10 of them, dozen of them. I don't know. Can't
There's
remember.
5 of the customs built.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's Ryan. I've never even heard of them. I've never seen one. Who
Yeah.
designed that?
Yeah, we did in-house. Just Dad, my father did. We built one for him, actually, the first one I think called Jan.
Yeah.
Remember we built.
There was one, I noticed the Sunshine mentioned She used to be down, just down the coast, back and forth every year. I'd help the owner sail it down and back again. It was a nice boat, pretty boat. There was
She's still
a
around.
lot more
yeah.
room, headroom in the galley.
Yeah, the linear galley's nice. That's a good, nice feature to the boat.
If you come to New York, I have one sitting right here, so I could always take you out
Oh,
on
yeah,
it.
Dave's got one too. That's right.
So we have 3 of the 5 on this call. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I own Sunshine, a keeper in Muscongas Harbor, Muscongas Bay, and Buzz and Beth have Glory, which is also a custom, and they keep yours some of the time in Round Pond.
But Bob, can you talk
Yes.
about it a little more, that it was designed in-house and why and so on?
Okay. Yeah, we did that. I remember one of the first we built for a professor at Harvard or some school in Boston. His last name was Bates, and his wife, and they had a little dog about 8 pounds, a little Chihuahua, I guess it was. And we cut the head door, a little loop in the head door so the dog could go in the head to use the head, and they trained the dog to go in there and jump up on the toilet and use the toilet, believe it or not, and then come back and jump in bed with her, you know? And that was one of the custom. We did all kinds of things back in those days. Anyway,
I think
That
that was
raised-
Sunshine. Yeah,
last name was Bates, and he had one of the first boats.
yeah, I think they owned the Sunshine.
Anybody sees one with a little notch in the head door, you know, about 5 inches high, it's his boat.
So why did you build it? Was it customer
Well,
request?
my father wanted it that way. Because my father was a really good cook. He could say my mother wasn't too much in the galley, but my father was, and the whole boat is built around that galley. It's got a nice galley.
But wouldn't that have caused another plug to be built if the deck is
Yeah,
totally
it's a whole new
custom?
deck mold, correct.
Okay, so you should
It
start.
wasn't super successful. It wasn't as pretty, you know, kind of the house, the raised dog houses. You know, it didn't just, the standard boat was more popular.
Okay.
The other thing about the custom was, I mean, that raised pilot house was, that was an Ogie Nielsen, pretty much something he did on a lot of boats. So he may not have designed it for the Pilot, but he certainly was well known for it.
No, he might have done it. Yeah, could have well been.
Somehow I always thought it was a carryover from the, what, was it wooden 36 that had the pilot house? Bob?
I was going to say the same
Firebird
thing.
and those boats?
Yeah, the Southwester 36. I have an old photo of one sailing, and it looks to have that same, more
That's right.
looking, more hard lines, but it looked like it was kind of that design theory kind of came from that old boat. I've never seen a Southwester 36 in person, but
My
seems like
recollection is that looked better with those harder turns than it did in the rounded plastic, if you will. And
sure.
And Bob says that it just didn't work out as well.
Agree.
That's all right. Just different.
Dad, what years did you make those?
I don't remember. Later on, mid to later on in the production.
60s, late 60s?
Ours was built in
late-
the
would be late
65.
70s.
Oh yeah, because I was built in 66. That's why I never saw it. Maybe.
Ours is a 64.
Ours
Okay.
is 64. Tara's a 64.
Oh,
Oh,
so
maybe they were earlier then.
they launched them earlier and they didn't take off, and you went back to the original. That's what it sounds like.
No, they intermixed probably.
All right. So if James Patterson has, what was the basis for building the Competition 34 using the Pilot mold? Thinking of Bob Johnson's memory compared to my high flyer Pilot sloop, we raced against each other.
Oh, the competition pilot we built?
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw the transom off and bigger rig in it. Made a few changes and what was it called? We called it highball. The original
High
name was
flyer, high ball.
Highball.
Highball originally, yeah.
We raced it just briefly and then didn't pursue it further than that.
Just did one of them.
Just one.
Oh,
It was a hot little boat, you know.
so Bruce wants to know what the evolution of the window configuration of the Pilot 35, the long window versus the scaled down windows. That would just add more sunlight. I mean, because we
Yeah.
did the B40 at the same time,
Yeah.
and both boats around 65.
The early ones had the,
I
yeah,
think you went to the longer windows.
yeah, a little bit more light, a little more sexy.
Well, and that was that when the Hinckley after window on the cabin top, you could really tell that shape.
Yeah, you wanted,
That was a
it was a shape that was important too, you know.
yeah, that was very distinguished shape. But I think that happened around 66 when I know the B40, and Mickey will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the B40 switched from the wooden, and Hank remember this too, or Dad, the wooden winch blocks to molded fiberglass. And I think the pilots always, there was always molded glass,
Always
weren't they?
molded, I think, yeah.
There was no wooden winch blocks on the pilots, but I think they both went to larger windows around
65.
65.
Yeah.
And it was a better look. It's a better look, and you get a lot more light in the boat because the boats were dark interior. All those early boats were pretty dark.
Yeah, Honduras mahogany. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much the we got one here from Dave Caporale. On my original sales order, hull number is whoops. Yeah, job number 3525. That would be the series number. So that was the 25th pilot build. So 35 is the length of pilot, and 25 and the hull number is 1108. That's the 1108th boat built by Hinckley.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
That's the
I was gonna
difference
ask the
in
same question.
Always bugged me what the two differences are.
Yeah.
Yeah, series number and hull number, and they don't really. It's all different now because the Coast Guard got involved in 1972, and they've changed the convention a couple different times on how you have to
Well-
legally have hull numbers.
Well, I have to have, I'm a business, so I have to document my boat, and the length of my boat, according to the Coast Guard, is 28.5 feet long.
Probably the water line.
That's
No,
what I,
Halfway between the overall length and the waterline, isn't it, John?
so I told them it's a 35-foot boat. They were like, shut up.
Yeah. It's something to do with the displacement.
Yeah,
Funny number,
it's a formula.
the formula, yeah.
Yeah, it's a formula they make you use. They do some weird stuff. I mean, I'll tell you the naming convention on the new boats, they've gone to a unified hull number, which is, let's call it 30. If it's a 30, if a picnic boat, it would be 36, and then the number like 010, and then the a letter in 1 through the letters go A through L, which are the 12 months of the year, and then the year that it was molded. So that would be the last digits, okay, 3, and then the year that it was launched. So it's a little more complicated now, but in the old days it was even more complicated because there was a hull number and a series number. But now they've unified it down to 1.
Going back to that 3527, the pilot book says her original name was Tara, T-A-R-A. And unfortunately, there's no write-up in the book because many of the boats have a little write-up that tells their history or who owns it and what they've done with it. And it's quite a nice little book that Dan Danilek, a pilot owner, put together years ago.
I am in contact with the former owner's son, so I have the whole history if anybody,
Okay, good.
just so you know.
Yeah, that's great.
Dad, we got a question here. And Hank, you feel free to chime in if you were used for child labor at the time. Because it's a distinct possibility, depending on what time of day it was. Any stories about building those early boats, or any struggles or hassles getting boats out of molds or getting fetched up, or any good stories, bad stories about the building process?
No, the biggest thing was we just got the assembly line really cranked up and going, but then of course you run out of sales. So yeah, we did one a week there for a while, for a couple of months, and we had the whole shop was full of nothing but Pilot 35s.
And at the same time, weren't there B40s being built like crazy too?
A few of them around, but we had the pilots under try to mechanize it as much as possible. And but they did go out a little bit rough, so the warranty bumped up a little bit. They can bite you in the ass,
Yeah, I hear you.
We always took care of it.
that I think some of the people were not on when we talked about the first Bermuda 40, hull number 1. And there's some questions in the audience about the first working with the first fiberglass hulls and transitioning from wood to glass.
Oh, boy.
Because that was a little bit of a risk. Did you have to fight Grandpa a little bit on that one?
No, he was 100% for it. It was a matter of getting everybody at the plant on board. One of the first things we had, because we were dealing with a lot of explosive chemicals, acetone, styrene, and everybody was smoking and drinking at lunchtime, and so I had to fire a couple of guys that were smoking, and I remember 2 of the guys, they were lambing out the B-40 hull with the keel bolts, and some of the time they sat down and were resting there, and I looked down in it, and they were kind of to jump up, but they were stuck to the glass for the heat of their rear end, kicked over the resin, and then a couple of guys were smoking with the stuff. We had a fire every friggin' month when I first went to work there back in 1960, and so it was struggle to get people used to fiberglass and get them to wear the mask with the grinding all the grinding of the resin and fiberglass and the dust in the air. You walk through there, it's white, so the transition was pretty big. And Mickey Fahey was a superintendent back then, and he worked for the Red Cross during World War II. So he was really worried about everybody dying. So they had to struggle with that. And so it was hard getting people to shift from wood to glass because they didn't like it. I remember being at uptown somewhere, and a lobsterman came up to me and said, "You're building these glass boats, damn you, they're gonna run into rock and they're gonna crash and everybody's gonna die." It just was a huge number of people against fiberglass back then. So it was a struggle to get it going, but you don't see any lobstermen, too many of them with wooden boats anymore. They're all glass boats. That was quite a transition. The resins, I did pretty well in chemistry and the different resins and catalyzing, and the glass fiber. Some of that early glass fiber wasn't great. Going from matte to woven roving and then unidirectional roving, and then of course later on the Kevlar, and now they're all boats are pretty much built with carbon fiber. It's been a huge change along the way. We first used vinyl ester resin, and then polyester, vinyl ester, and then modified vinyl ester. And now it's mostly epoxy, although I'm sure they still use some of the cheaper resins. But it's the boats they're building today up there are really amazing. Of course, they're very expensive, but they're lighter, stronger, and
Faster.
Pardon me?
Faster.
Yeah, and they're faster. That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, enough of that.
We got Dave Batchelder has a question.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Just a couple points. Melissa and I own Blue Moon, which is one of the 25 yawls that was built. And there are 2 wooden pilots that are down here in Kittery, Maine. One that is being restored, the other which someone could get very inexpensively right now, but would need a total rebuild. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I just was up at our boat today. We've taken the engine and the fuel tank out. Ours was built in 72. The Monel fuel tank is still strong and holding pressure, even though
And worth more than the boat.
Probably is worth more than the boat.
Yeah, if
Guard
anyone wants,
that tank.
yeah, if anyone wants to buy it, let me know.
I'll take the tank.
Anyway, it's amazing to look down into the
Almost finished.
into
I'm
the
late. I
bilge.
realize that, but
Hold on, we got, someone might have to mute. All right, keep going, Dave.
Yeah, anyway, just looking down in the bilge and just seeing the layup of the fiberglass and how thick and bulletproof it is. These hulls were made to last, and I think that's one of the things that all of us pilot owners really appreciate about it.
I mean, I don't know, Hank, maybe you can comment on this, but Dad, you always told me that everything was so overbuilt in the beginning because they didn't really know how good fiberglass was.
And I never wanted to build a boat. I always said I would never build a boat that I wouldn't sail to Bermuda myself, so. You don't want to be out there and worried about the boat coming apart. But we didn't know how long this material would last or how really strong it was. Used to take panels and shoot a 22 and a 38 at it and bounce right off the 3/8 inch glass. But
Do I remember that you used to keep a rifle in the corner of your office for that purpose?
Yeah.
I heard some stories, but I'm
I
not
had
sure
to-
that I ever
I had to
saw.
drive to my family and go shoot something,
Can't make a living in the boat business, for God's sakes.
Right.
Don't you know that, Hank?
That's the truth. I will not argue.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dad, you actually told me a story about a guy that you had to shoot the boat,
No,
panel to prove him how rugged it
this
was.
is John, I'm down in Portland. No,
Was it the Beam family or the?
no.
Payson.
Family?
Johnny Payson?
Well, Payson, John Payson. Yeah. He was at Bowdoin and his father, Charlie Payson, called me up and said, I want to buy a Bermuda 40 for my son for his graduation. I can't believe he's really graduated from Bowdoin. And so he said, oh, fine. He said, so called John up and said, your dad told me you're building you a B-40. And he said, not a glass boat, not by a dam site. He said, I want a wooden boat. So I said, oh, geez. So I said, can I come down to see you? So I jumped in the car and took a panel down on a 38 revolver, went down and, panel about, not quite a half an inch, like 3/8, I guess. And went down and stood it up and they said, John, come out here and watch this. Whacked away at it, the 22 first, and it just bounced off it, and then 38, just dented it a little bit. Son of a bitch. So I went in and he had a whole barrel of hard cider. So we drank that for about 2 or 3 hours. And said, I guess I'll go ahead and build it for me. So, and, so he had it. What was the name of that boat? He had it for quite a long time. I don't think he sailed it that much.
Mickey, I think you're iPad 6 and you had a question.
Yeah, I do. Partly it got answered a while ago. The story is that at the 98 rendezvous, we chartered a boat, a Pilot that we really enjoyed because it was impossible to bring our boat up there. And it was a yawl named Francisca. And at the time, I did not even know that there were Pilot yawls. So I just heard earlier from John that approximately 25 were built, but I'm really curious as to the ratio of yawls versus sloops. And the Pilots, it seems to be an inverse ratio compared to sloops and yawls and B-40s. Was there any particular reason for that, or that's just the way the market worked out?
The Pilot, there's an awfully small mizzen on the Pilot.
It's cute though.
A yawl, but it works fine, Jim Harvey was a naval architect and ran Bath Industries, boat building Bath, Man. He had one and he loved it and kept it in perfect shape. Called Madrigal. So,
I thought a Pilot yawl was a beautiful boat.
No question, it was. It was also, it was a place to hang the staysail on when you're reaching and all that.
Yeah,
You got some power out of that, but not out of the sail, out of the mizzen itself, I didn't think. Not much different than a steadying sail on a lobster boat, really.
I always thought it was a good place to put the radar.
True.
And a helm seat.
Yeah.
But right, it better be a small dome because that mizzen was kind of rickety. Right over your
always-
back, right over your head.
I always will remember Peter Smith commenting once. I said, Peter, how do you make a yawl go faster? And he said, take the mizzen mast out and leave it on the dock.
Right side of it.
All right, Jeff McKinnon, we have a question from Jeff.
Hi, first let me say, Barry and Johnny, thank you so much for organizing this. It's really precious to see everybody who was there and then talking about these boats. It's fantastic. Listen, I've owned Lyric for, this will be the 19th season. And when I was researching the boats, I read that in some community online that in this uncertain period about fiberglass boats, that lots of people were using quality resins on the outside, and then as they laminated inward, they were using cheaper and cheaper resins. But they said Hinckley never did that. Is that an accurate story? Can you guys go back in your memories to what it was like and the kind of choices you were making about these resins and the lamination process? I'm really interested in it because the boat is solid.
We always use good resins.
Yeah.
But, the best companies and no rebranded things or whatever, but I don't know about the other people, but just put a lot of glass and a lot of it would, by today's standards, there's too much resin. Plenty of glass in there so that it wasn't a problem. But when we first built those boats, we used to have about, what was it, about 2/3 resin and 1/3 glass, because you had to squeegee it out, you know, by hand, and it would float the resin would actually kind of float up the fiber, the glass and the mat and the
Yeah.
and it would get thicker, but still you had plenty in there. But today, you know, they build the boats under an infused process where they spray the color on the hull, and then they just spray a light tacking of resin and glass against the hull just to hold the gel coat in place in the hull. And then they go in and lay the whole boat up with glass. It's very sophisticated glass. And of course, a lot of it's carbon fiber particularly on the inside now. And then put a vacuum bag over the whole hull and pull a big vacuum on that, go around and test it, make sure there's no leaks anywhere with a sound machine, you know. And then they open up a couple of barrels of resin, and it just sucks it up in, and the whole boat is kicked over at one time. So you don't have any secondary bonds or everything, but you end up with 2/3 glass and 1/3 resin. You actually reverse.
So the strength, the weight ratio is
if you're
better.
building just a resin boat, it's the glass is like the steel in a reinforced concrete building. You got to have as much steel in there. The concrete doesn't add much. It's the steel or the fiber, and today the carbon fiber. And now that they've gone to epoxy, and they actually, after they laminate the boat, they put it in an oven and cook it some more. Really kick it over. So it's a whole different process and quite a bit more expensive. And but you end up with a very, very superior product.
Well, all I know about the quality of the resin is that I know you guys were always endeavoring to buy the best resins and make the best product, but that also meant Dad would not hire anyone to work at the Hinckley company that owned a pickup truck.
Tell me about that.
Because the resin would leave. No one would ever put resin in their car for obvious reasons. They would put it in the back of their pickup truck, and they'd friggin' steal the resin. The next thing you know, that guy had built a lobster boat with resin. You know, so that's right, pretty much.
Well, maybe a slight exaggeration.
Well, that's what you told me.
Did I?
Yeah.
Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah. He told them, I won't hire anyone with a pickup truck. That resin would walk.
Barry, I have another comment. That is, some of the pilots were built with wheels and some were built with tillers.
Hmm.
And I grew up with a tiller, but the Pilot I bought had a wheel. And I always wanted to find a pilot that wanted to switch the wheel for the tiller, so I could get the tiller and the rudder from him. But every time I've run into somebody like that, I always say to them, look, just keep the boat for one more year and sail it with the tiller and see if you want to change then. And I've never had anybody come to me and say, yeah,
Nobody took the
switch.
offer.
So the tiller seems to be, it's a pretty well balanced boat to sail with the tiller. So
It is.
it's a very sweet sailing boat in that respect.
Harry?
Yeah, Dave's got another question.
On,
that-
on the full keel, what was the decision made to have that hunk of lead at the bottom fore edge of the keel versus just weight all around in the keel?
Balance. The
Well, lead
position
hits
is
rock
critical.
better than fiberglass does too.
That was what it was.
You could bang it out with a hammer.
Is it
right?
just for running aground?
Having done that, I can attest to the wisdom of this decision.
Yes.
Easy to fix. I think there's also, though, I mean, it's also with the center of effort and gravity of the
Well,
boat, right? That's
having
why
having the lead outside, in the mast is grounded to that lead keel, and you're a lot less apt to get exploded. Now, some of the boats with that keel enclosed with a fiberglass has to have a plate on the outside or something to take off, to let the charge go through the boat, either up or down. I guess it could go both ways. But I've been hit by lightning on a boat, and I mean at 40, actually on the Great Lakes. Interesting experience. But fortunately, it carried all the current away because of pretty much the lead's on the outside, so that it's a good conductor. When we got hit, the only thing really bad was on the Mackinac Island race. It was in the middle of the night, it was raining, and I got hit, and I was on deck standing next to the guy at the helm, and some of the charge came down the backstay, hit him in the back, and like he'd been punched. Oh, he got punched in the back, and you all right? Yeah, okay. And then the alarm went off down below, the bilge pump went on. I thought, oh, that's not good. I went down there and everything was okay, except it went off shortly. We had about 2 cases or 3 cases of beer in there in cans, and it actually fused all the cans together like a honey hive.
Honeycomb?
And all the beer went in the bilge and pumped overboard. So we didn't have any beer for 2 days. That was a disaster. Other than that, we were okay. But that keel was a good conductor. It took the charge away.
Oh. All right. We got a question from Daniel and Ellen.
Thank you so much for this program. This is really wonderful. At the pilot rendezvous that was held in Brooklyn, Maine last summer, there was a fellow pilot owner who had a broker tell him that if you want a pilot, think about the production span from 63 to 75. If you get an early one, you'll get a better hull. It'll be a more fair, better hull. If you get a later one, you'll get a better finish. And my question is about the beautiful finish woodwork as well as the hull. Do you think there's any truth to that speculation? And tell us a little bit more about the finished woodwork, which is so gorgeous.
I don't think there's any difference.
Yeah, my sense is it must be, I think the hulls, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, were probably a little heavier up front, but not necessarily better. I mean, the resin glass ratio was probably higher then, but they were certainly rugged. The finish work inside, we did change a little bit the wood, and it was what I think I referred to before. Some of the features of the bigger boats worked their way down in terms of trim, the African Regina mahogany versus the original, which was Philippine with Honduran solids, as I recall.
Right.
So Yeah, there's a little bit to that, but boy, that's slicing hairs, I think.
They might have been referencing that period too, when you were really cranking them out. And
They were all fine. We just had a little more work to do them later on. They came back and that'd be finished, you know. But, well, pretty much the same.
all right, Hank, you got any personal Pilot 35 stories? So if Grandpa built, or Papa, as half the kids call them, built that boat, the custom Jan, then you would have been on that. You would have been about in your teens, right?
That's right. I think that I was in high school then. I remember sailing that boat. It was delivered to the Broward Marine Yard in Florida. We picked it up, got a commission. We sailed it over to the Bahamas. So I'm guessing I must have been 6th grade or something. So I spent 6th grade in Florida, and it was a nice boat. But as I recall, in a sloppy Gulf Stream, it wasn't the biggest boat going crosswise, trying to get to Bimini. We did a lot of swimming, but it was, the boat was fine. We just got wet. That's all. But I do remember that was the custom boat, and that would have been what, 63, 2, something like that.
65, I think.
Was it that late? Wow.
Well, there's
Okay.
a boat in the pilot list called Jan 2. Was that her name?
That was the second one, I think, but it might
Okay.
be. Yeah, it might be.
Yeah, you're right then.
So was the one you sailed on, that was custom with the
Yes.
dog?
Yep.
Okay. I was trying to trace back if that was our boat or not our boat at one point.
Yeah.
It's been painted so many times. It's obviously gonna have a different paint job, and all I know is the hull number is 1111, 3528 is the build.
Yeah.
That's her.
That's her? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
She was built in
It's funny, I
64.
remember my father had kind of a perverse sense of humor. I think he and my mother and I and a girlfriend from Michigan sailed across with him. And I didn't know her all that well. We were, just getting to know each other. And Dad suggested she go down below in the middle of the Gulf Stream and make some tuna fish sandwiches. She got them done, but she was so green when she came out of the cabin. Good sport. I think she passed the old man test by doing that. But it was a nice boat. I mean, that was a nice thing. Those old boats, they may be slow, but if you can take it, they'll get you there.
Was that a wheel or a tiller?
That was my recollection.
Okay, yeah, ours is still a wheel. I just didn't know if it was added over time.
Yeah, now Bob, wasn't Mambrino the first one with a forward wheel, or did you do that on night training and not on Mambrino? I can't remember now.
No, I think Mambrino has the aft wheel. You did the
Did it?
forward wheel on the 41.
Oh, yeah, no, just
Yeah, okay, with the single winch behind it. That's right. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
41.
Anybody know anybody done a transatlantic race other than Larry White on a Pilot 35? Must be some others who've gone across. I know he sailed it across from here to Europe. And I'm not sure if he sailed it back or shipped it back, but
The one I know who's done the most offshore of anybody is Louis Mayer.
did he go transatlantic all the way to Europe?
He sailed to Europe, and he actually lost the boat from leaving the Azores or someplace, and abandoned it, was taken off by a Coast Guard, and the boat was later saved, and a Frenchman bought it, restored it, took it to the Bahamas, and Lewis bought her back.
Oh my God.
So he still owns her, but he does the Newport Bermuda 1-2, and he's probably done 8 or 10 of those races. So he's got a lot of offshore experience in a pilot. He loves it. He's not usually in the leader board, but he enjoys it.
Okay, I think we got time for one more because I can hear the pots going in the background. We got dinner coming. But Dave, we got
When it
another
comes to the
question.
original power, were the boats originally with atomic fours or diesels to start?
Atomic 4.
Again,
And then the,
I don't know if we had the atomic 4 in those originally. Do you remember, Hank?
yeah,
Graham-
I think the wood were all atomic 4, and then I believe also the early pilots
No,
were atomic
no,
4.
it was a
Or
Gray Marine. Gray Marine.
The
That's
Gray
right. I'm
Marine?
sorry. I stand corrected. That's correct. Yeah.
So the reason why I ask is I found about 16, 20-pound lead bars in the V berth
Right.
under the little shelf. Was that because that engine was so heavy that the boat was unbalanced? Do you recollect why those bars were put there?
No.
Oh,
It
okay.
was individual trim. I mean,
Right.
she's sensitive to what's in the cockpit, so somebody may have put extra batteries, decided to put, they're all a little different. That's just a guess, but
Okay.
Right.
John, you've seen more of these than I have probably, but what would be the other reason or any other reason?
I can't think of any good reason. Maybe to reduce the weather helm or something like that, or.
I thought that was my job. When I waved to Bob a few times, he'd tell me to go up forward and stay next to the cleats and hold on. I'm not sure it was to see if he could drown me or whether it really was a help to make her go to windward.
Hey, Barry,
Yeah.
I have one question. I put it in the group chat, but I'm not sure it got there. But because technology and I sometimes don't agree. But I just was wondering how folks feel about a 100% jib for cruising and day sailing versus the larger, say, 135% jib. What's been everybody's experience?
135. Here's my experience is I started out with I bought the boat, she had a 135 and I pretty quickly changed to a 150 and now I'm down to a 110. It's age related is my opinion.
There was some with self-tending jibs, I think. Isn't that right, Bob? A couple of them? I see
Maybe,
for rigging.
probably, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm with John. As the older I get, the less headsel I like. It's too much work.
Well, that's the reason for my question.
For me, it was either electric winches or a smaller jib.
Could I ask one more question?
Sure.
So our boat is 1964 and it has the external ballast and it has keel bolts. And I just wonder, I mean, how long are those gonna last?
Those were Everdell, were they not? Or were they Monel in that?
It'll last longer than boat will. I mean, I don't think there's any problem with those that I've heard.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just took the keel off a 66 Bermuda 40 that got hit by lightning. And I took it apart. There was one keel boat I couldn't get to. So I kind of had to mangle that. But the Monel bolts, I found a little tiny bit of corrosion around the interface between the keel and the hull body. But in no case was there a need to replace the bolt. I took them out, we checked them. I had a metaller just look at them because I mean, it looked like flames had come out between the hull and the keel on her and just burned the bottom pane. So I took them apart. She was fine. She was fine.
Monel bolts?
Were the early pilots built with Monel bolts too?
I am not sure.
I think
we
it's
used
some kind
Everdell.
of bronze. It's
Everdell,
Yeah.
probably.
Everdell, yeah.
Yeah,
That'd
that's
be
what
too
it is.
expensive.
Jeff McKinnon, another question? One more for the road.
Harry, I just want to say, I know we're running out of time, but I'm a marketing guy, and when there's a line around the block, the restaurant should raise the prices. And I think you can see by how many people are on the call and how interested we are in all of this, how much pleasure we would all have from doing this again. It shouldn't be Christmas every day, but it would be great to do this again.
Yeah,
Well-
I agree.
Yep.
Well, so that's the plan. I'm glad you brought that up, Jeffrey. So we did one 2 weeks ago on the building of the renovation with Niall Rafferty on the hole number 1 of the Bermuda 40. And then that was fun. And then so 2 weeks later we're doing this. We did this one, and then I'm going to try to do one every 2 weeks for the
Oh,
Hinckley
wow.
Club members. So as long as you're signed up on the Hinckley Club, then I have your email, and then I send out an announcement, and Uncle Hank and Dad and I will keep doing these as long as we can, I guess, as long as we're available.
I'll try to make sure I'm signed up then. Wonderful idea.
We're gonna do some power boats too. Just we'll probably. Dad, I was talking about doing one with Shep and Haywood about the development of the picnic boat.
Yeah.
That would be a
Yeah.
fun one because that was such a revolutionary breakthrough boat. I think Uncle Hank, we can probably do some on your great story. Hinckley and OC. So there's a lot of stuff that we can unlock, but we're gonna keep doing them. Shoot for every 2 weeks. This
Terrific.
time.
Much
And,
appreciated.
Yeah, and feel free to share them, and I'll, just as long as you're signed up. And those guys in the audience and gals that own the customs, I've never, believe it or not, I've never seen one. They were built. I was built in 1966, and I guess those left before I was on the scene. I've never seen the interior of one. I'd love to, if you could upload them to the Hinckley Club and just take some photos.
I just uploaded some photos of ours when we did the refit on it on the Hinckley Club page. So it should be under the boat's name's Pelican now.
Okay, great.
Navy flag blue hull. So it should be on that. Should be up there.
Oh, I'd love to see that. That'd be great.
Fantastic.
All right. Anyone, John, any parting gifts of knowledge for us from the Pilot Owners Association?
Well, I just presume that all the pilot owners that are listening to this are members of the HPA, because it's a pretty great organization, like the Concordia organization and those groups of boats, people that are connected through their boats. It's a really good thing. So
you mean the Pilot Owners Association, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a great association. I know you guys do a rendezvous every summer up in Maine, correct?
We want everybody to plan to come to the rendezvous.
When is it?
July 19th.
Where?
Thank you.
Tenants Harbor.
July 19th in Tennis Harbor.
And there's typically a little cruise before and after.
And you guys usually get 10, 12 boats, right?
Oh, we've had 14 or 15.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
3 hands.
It's growing.
Okay.
And they're new pilot owners. It's quite interesting to watch the new generation discover these boats.
And I just so everyone, the pilot owners that are listening, I got a call from a pilot owner in Annapolis that is putting his boat on the market. Beam Reach, I think it's hull number 51. It's based at the Annapolis Yacht Club. So if anyone wants more information on that, just give me I'll put my I'm just Barry at hinckleyins.com. So my Barry at Hinckley, then it's our friend INS, India, November, Sierra, Barry at Hinckley. Just send me an email if you want information. I'll connect you with the owner of that boat that's interested in selling it.
Great.
I think it's called Beam Reach because it was owned by one of the owners of Jim Beam originally, I guess. And these guys have had for 6 years, where the other owner had it for 50. Before
Wow. Wow.
that. Okay. And Mickey, I just, for you Bermuda 40 owners, I had a great story. I got contacted last week by Diana Carpenter, whose husband Tom Carpenter bought Larkspur from Dad and Grandpa in 1974, I think, which is the Bermuda 40, and he just passed away at 94 years old. He owned the boat. He owned the boat for 50 years.
Yeah,
Yes,
great.
I've been talking to Tom a lot.
Yeah, he just passed. His widow called me because they wanted to value the boat. They were going to donate it, and
his hull was right after hours in the production schedule.
yeah, she told me an interesting story. I guess he's from Texas, right. Mickey?
Right. Yeah.
And
he's
he
from
came
Houston.
up, and he's had to have a Bermuda 40. And he said, Diana said, being a Texan, he thought he could get it right now, and my grandfather was like, no, you got to wait a year for a boat. He said, well, I need it right now. And he said, well, I guess Papa did. He said the owner of Pettit Paints, correct me if I'm wrong, Dad, or something, was having a boat coming off the assembly line that spring in about a month, but he's got a little cross-threaded with his wife on the interior or something, and he was gonna not accept the boat or not take the boat, and it might be available. And so Tom bought that boat, which became Larkspur, which has been owned for 50 years.
Wow.
I really enjoyed talking to Tom these last few years. I wish I could have met him in person.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
I've got some photos I'll send you of Larkspur and him on Larkspur that Diana just sent me. The boat looked fantastic. It's up here in Merritt Island, Florida, and it looks absolutely perfect. He kept that like a museum piece.
He's a friend of John Trainer.
And I know that Kim Hopkins, who is the best Hinckley varnisher left, the only really good one left, actually, that worked at Hinckley and Still Varnishing, she connected me with the Carpenters and reconnected us, and she did that varnish work, and I can tell you it's fantastic.
Yeah, he told me he flew her down every time she needed the coat.
Yeah, she's the real deal. She's a true artiste.
Wow.
All right. Well, anyway, have a great night. The ladies got dinner ready, so we're gonna go do that. I've recorded this, so I'll send out the recording to everyone on the Hinckley list, and I'll send it to you, John. If you feel free to forward, I'll just put it up on YouTube with the Bermuda 40 recording. We'll just keep adding them there and keep going. All right.
Okay,
Barry,
thanks a
Thank
lot.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Barry.
so much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
It's
Have a
been
great
really
night.
good. Great to see you, Bob.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you, Hank.
Yeah, great to see you, John. Hank.
All right. Good to see you, Uncle Hank. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Take care.